Welcome back to another episode of the Braun Performance and Rehab Podcast. Joining me today is Shawna Ferraro. Shawna and I are going to be diving into her journey as an athlete. We talk about the injuries that she has overcome. We talk about her mindset and her habits as an athlete. We talk about how she ended up at Middlebury College and the success she's had there thus far. I really appreciate Shauna's time and love everything that she is doing, and I really appreciate the kind of message that she has for other athletes as well. This is a great listen. Episodes like this are made possible by our sponsors, ISOFIT and Oro Muscles. For more on ISOFIT and Oro, you can check the description below. Shauna, welcome to the podcast. I'm super excited to work with you today. For people who might not be familiar with you or all the incredible things you're doing in the sports world up there in Middlebury, would you mind filling them in a little bit about who you are and all that you do?
My name's Shawna Ferraro. I'm a sophomore at Middlebury College, and I play field hockey on the team. It's my second season here.
I think I saw that you ran track and field last year too, correct?
So I didn't actually run for Middlebury, but when I'm not in field hockey season, I train year round with my running coach from home, Heather Petch. She's a professional coach, and I've been training with her since sophomore year of high school, and it's really helped to elevate my game in field hockey with my endurance. And I ran track in high school, so that's awesome. Just get to keep training when I'm not in season for field hockey.
Yeah, that's absolutely incredible. And you mentioned Middlebury, and I think I might have mentioned Middlebury as well there. How exactly did you end up at Middlebury? Because, I've kind of found myself immersed in the sports world, and I keep hearing the name Middlebury come up for field hockey, for lacrosse, and it just seems like this small school in the middle of nowhere. So how did you end up there, and how did the sports programs kind of develop into what they are?
Yeah, so my recruiting process, I my freshman year of high school, I kind of knew that I wanted to strive to play collegiate athletics, and field hockey was, I at the time hadn't been running track. I started midway through my freshman year, but at the time I was just playing field hockey. So I started to kind of attend camps and clinics, and at first I was looking at a lot of the Patriot League schools. NESCAC schools hadn't really like popped into my mind. And then I suffered a stress fracture from track, unfortunately. So I was out for a couple months, and this was at the time like this was my sophomore year at this time, and this was like the peak recruiting time for D1 schools. So I was a little bit behind once I started to get back into things. But I went on a bunch of visits to the Patriot League schools. But at each school, like I felt something a little bit off. Like it didn't really feel like the right fit, whether that was like the academics, the campus, the girls on the team, the coaches. And then I started to look at some more NESCAC schools because they're very obviously rigorous in academics, and I that was a challenge that I wanted to kind of approach head on. So I was talking to a bunch of NESCAC schools and started talking to Middlebury and fell in love with the coaches, and I came up and met the team. It instantly felt like home, and remember driving up on the hill, like right when you pull up to the campus, there's a big hill, and then when you're driving down, you can see like the whole campus. And I told my mom, I remember I was like, I'm gonna come here, like this is the place. And so from there, I just continued talking to Middlebury. I attended a lot of their clinics and games. So going into when I came here, I knew like almost the whole team already, had a really solid relationship with the coaches. So it was awesome to just kind of be able to come here and just feel like I had a family and these are my people, and I love it here so much. So I wouldn't trade it for the world.
That's incredible. It certainly sounds like you're the kind of individual who really likes to kind of surround yourself with the best individuals that you can. And it sounds like you're also pretty competitive, both in sport and in academics that way. It sounds like you're really the kind of person that likes to be challenged based on what you were saying there. And I find that sometimes that's a hard environment to kind of find yourself in sport and in academics that way. It's like, how can I find the spot that's really going to push me to grow and become the best version of myself? And it sounds like you found that exactly in Middlebury there. What do you feel like set the program apart from some of the other programs that you looked at that way? Where do you think that competitive element really came from for them?
The balance of just competitiveness, determination, and grit that the Middlebury field hockey team embodies, but also there's such a balance of joy, happiness, and fun. And I think that's so evident with just seeing in other teams that we play against, or just when we're at like Final Four banquets and stuff, like our team brings the energy, like whether that's on the field or off the field. And I think that kind of tight-knit closeness and the connections that we build off the field contributes to our success on the field. And I think that really has had an impact. Obviously, like I knew the team was really successful before I committed here, but being a part of this and kind of seeing what goes into the success of the team, not even on the field, but just off the field, it's just been like really awesome to be a part of. And I'm really fortunate and lucky to be on the team and kind of experiencing everything.
Right, and obviously you won national championship last year, 2023. You won it again this year, 2024. What kind of energy do you bring to the team, and how do you feel that kind of helps kind of lift up the rest of the team to kind of, cultivate that championship mentality that you all have experienced for the last several years in a row?
So specifically this year, we had 9 seniors who pretty much all of them started. So my role in games was more bringing the energy on the sidelines, mostly like my entire grade, was just kind of participating with the energy that was for the people on the field. And I think it's so, even if you don't play as many minutes as the starters in the field, just to be a part of this program and learn and grow has just been awesome. And I think that contributing, in a sense, because I'm an underclassman, just the energy that I have to bring to the practices and games really helps in the long run to contribute to the success of our games.
Yeah, I think that's a really valid point. I think that everyone on the team has a role to play that way. There's a girl that I work with that you just kind of made me think of that way, where unfortunately, she hasn't seen the field in her sport in several months due to injury that way, but she still shows up to every single thing. And she's still like the most positive ray of sunshine kind of personality that you'll find anywhere out there. And I think that those kind of people are the ones that really uplift everyone else. And I'd imagine you mentioned before that you had a stress fracture injury that way and you missed some time in sport because of that. And I'd imagine that, elements like that or things like that that restrict you from being able to play make you appreciate the opportunities that you do get to play all that much more because there's a window of time where all you wanted to do was probably step on the field or go for a run, but you couldn't. And now you finally have that locus of control back. You can do whatever you want to do. And, when you do get those opportunities to play, I'd imagine it's just like tenfold better.
Yeah, I think specifically kind of injuries have made me grow as a person and realize that every day I get to wake up and play field hockey, go for a run, lift is a privilege. And there's so many people who, unfortunately, because of injury or whatever reason, aren't able to do those things. So I think just realizing that like maybe a lift you don't want to go to, like in the long run, like you're so fortunate to be able to do that. And I think every day I wake up with a mindset of I have goals and I'm going to get them, and I'm going to achieve them. And I think just there's greatness within all of us. And in order to like maximize your potential, you have to envision like your success and what you want every day. And I think that's been really important for me to realize specifically this year. For me, envisioning myself next year, like I need to put in the work this year to kind of get to where I want to be next year.
Now, you said a few things there. You mentioned injuries, plural. Have there been other injuries that you've faced that way outside of the stress injury that way?
Yeah, so unfortunately, I have dealt with several stress fractures, which has definitely been hindering to my athletic journey. It's been a lot of ups and downs. I tend to push myself until I can't anymore, and I've had to learn the hard way that that's not always the best for me. Specifically in like freshman and sophomore year of high school, I just kept pushing myself to the brink. I also suffered with an eating disorder, so that also contributed, especially when I'm running lots and lots of miles, and not fueling myself. And at the time, I wasn't strength training or doing rehab, rolling out, stretching, sleeping enough. And I have the best support team at home, and I text them, talk to them all the time, even at school. And when I go back home, I see them all. My chiropractor, acupuncturist, physical therapists, coaches, like I love them and I'm so grateful for them. And they've taught me so much as an athlete and as a person. And I'm really like proud to say that now I know the importance of sleeping 8 or more hours. I know the importance of, like maximizing your recovery, like having easy days be easy, hard days be hard, like fueling yourself, getting enough carbs, protein, like hydration, electrolytes. Like I could go on and on about this, but I think this has really helped me to kind of remain stress fracture free for, knock on wood, 2 years, which is a lot for me because I've had 3 or 4. So it was kind of like I'd have a stress fracture, I'd go back, but I wouldn't kind of change my habits, and then I'd suffer another one. And I think all these changes and the growth I've made, learning from my mistakes, has really helped me to be the fastest, strongest, fittest that I've ever been, and without injuries.
There's so much to unpack there, isn't there, Shawna? First off, huge props to you for just continuing to be consistent and work through all of the injuries that you've faced that way because I know it's incredibly difficult. It's difficult to come back after one. It's even more difficult when it's a second time and a third time and a fourth time. It wears on you and it gets mentally exhausting. So huge props to you for battling through all of those things that way because obviously it sounds like there's been a lot of obstacles in your path, but you didn't just kind of stop and settle there. You found ways to overcome them that way. And I also think that you mentioned about the importance of surrounding yourself with a great team of individuals. And I think that's true, just like we mentioned before, from the academics and sports side, but also on the personal side that way, right? You listed a number of different disciplines that way. And I think that the more holistic we can be in working with an athlete, the more we kind of bring everyone together in the best interest of how can we all serve you to be your best version of yourself, the better off you're going to be, the more likely you are to stay healthy, achieve all your goals and ambitions and dreams. And obviously, you mentioned before that you've got a ton of goals, and we'll get to that. But I just really love that concept of bringing everyone, chiro, PT, acupuncture, strength coach, performance coach, whatever it is that way, bringing everyone together with the common goal of how can we best serve the athlete and how can we best provide for you that way. I think that covers a lot of different things that you all need. And I also think on top of that, when we get some of these complex things, like in your case, a stress fracture, as you mentioned, there's so many different things that could be going on with that. Nutrition plays a role, sleep plays a role, training plays a role. Sometimes it's too much, sometimes it's not enough of certain things. It's so complex that I don't think that there's one individual out there who can lift all of that themselves and, handle that burden of how do I sort all of these things out for one person. I think that the more interdisciplinary you make that, the better off the outcome is going to be. And I really love that concept that you brought up, just having a high performance team basically dedicated to you. And that's something that I wish pretty much every athlete would get at some point. It's just this concept of, hey, I'm going to surround myself with four, five, maybe six of the best individuals in these disciplines, and I'm going to let them work with me, and we're going to see what happens. And I think that when you do that, you really kind of like hit that next level of what your athletic potential can be that way. On that note as well, was that something that you yourself decided like, hey, look, I need to seek out all of these different individuals, or is that something that someone kind of like coached you into a little bit, or how did we kind of end up with this concept of, hey, look, I really need to like develop my own interdisciplinary team that way?
So I give a lot of props to Heather. Heather was really opened up my eyes, and helped me realize that relying on these resources and trusting these resources is a game changer. And I think no high-level elite athlete can do it all themselves. I think having a team of people to support you is beneficial. So Heather connected me with the physical therapy group that I've been working with for 6 years or so. Performance physical therapy. There's a bunch of locations around me in Fairfield County. And then with that, they have nutritionists. So I spoke and worked with a nutritionist out of performance. And then my acupuncturist is not kind of correlated with that, but still I see her. And then my chiropractor I've been seeing since I was a little kid. So yeah, I've just gone back to him. He's been so great to my entire family. And yeah, and then my strength coaches are out of the high school, and I've kept working with them every time I go back for the summers. I work with the strength trainer Miska. He's the best. So yeah, it's really a great group of people, and I look forward to going back there all the time just to be surrounded with them and get to see them again.
Yeah, and it's so interesting to me that you continue to see physical therapy that way when you don't currently have an injury that way. And I know that's something that a lot of people in the profession are certainly trying to push. And, I might be a little bit biased on that because I'm a PT myself, but it's one of those things where I find pretty much everyone has something that they could be working on that way. And it's just a matter of finding someone who can give you some kind of like one-on-one individual attention. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a PT. You mentioned you work with trainers, strength coach, that sort of thing that way. And I think that, having those kind of things in place and just having someone who can really kind of dive into, working with you in a one-on-one manner that way can really change the game as far as like, again, going on the performance and injury prevention route. The more you kind of get to know someone and work with them long term, the better off you're going to be there. Now, you mentioned earlier as well that you have a number of different goals and you're a goal-oriented person that way. Walk me through kind of what you do to set goals. What kind of goals have you set for this year? And since we're at the end of the year that way, looking back retrospectively, did you accomplish everything that you set out to, or is there anything that you would have done different? Or walk me kind of through this.
Yeah, so I would say my mind is a complex place. I expect the best of myself and I push myself to strive towards what I think greatness is. And I'm a very goal-oriented person. For instance, when I was trying to commit for Feel Lucky every day, I think I have the notebook. Yeah, I do, right here. It says Path to My Goal. And so I started it in 2020, actually. So the first day was November 29th, 2020. And every day I'd put a different college logo that even if I didn't want to attend, I'd just put the logo there and I'd write what I did athletically that day. So, like, for instance, like a track workout, core workout, field hockey run test. And I continued the whole entire thing for years until I committed. And I think that just shows that sums me up kind of in a nutshell. When I want something, I do whatever I can to achieve it. And I love to write down my goals. I like to reflect on how I'm doing with my goals. And I think specifically for track, for instance, where it's a kind of a numbers-based sport, I think that my work ethic and determination really helped me to strive in track. And I think I really unlocked my potential in track because I was able to kind of use I'm a very self-motivated person, and in an individualized kind of sport, it's really easy to succeed if you're every day you wake up, put in the work, grind, work harder than anybody, get first one to be there, last one to leave. It's kind of my mindset. So yeah, and then for goals, I have a lot of goals for myself. For instance, to maintain my 4.0 GPA is one. So every day I wake up at like 5:30. I do homework, do some readings that I need to get done, and then I'll go for a run, work out, get breakfast, go to class, study some more, lunch, and then practice. So that's kind of like a typical day in season. But I would say I I strive to achieve my goals and I strive to kind of work towards them so much that it's kind of just like not tunnel vision because I don't think that's necessarily always a good thing, but I see my goals and I want them. And a lot of things in life I think are distractions and I do my best to kind of cut those out.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly sounds like you have a ton of discipline to just kind of get up and get after it day in and day out that way. And that's certainly something that I've seen as like a common characteristic or trait, I'd say, amongst high level athletes. It doesn't matter if it's D1 or D3 that way, but if you want to make it to the next level and you want to be successful, you have to take these things seriously. You have to sweat the small stuff. And pretty much everyone I've talked to just gets up and gets after it every single day, right? Like you mentioned, you wake up at 5:30 in the morning, and I know some people are going to hear that and they're going to say, "Oh my gosh, that's too early for me." But it's like, that's what it takes to be highly successful on the field and in the classroom at the same time that way. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure you said before previously that you've got a double major. I know English was one of them that way, and you love writing and reading and that
Yes.
sort of thing. But it's like it's a grind to have a double major and be committed to, one of the most successful D3 field hockey programs that I've ever seen that way. So I certainly think that element of work ethic and motivation is really, really key. I like how you said, when I want something, I work to achieve it that way. And I think that that's something, again, I see it common amongst athletes, but it's something that you just can't teach. There's a lot of athletes that, tell me that they have learned more from their sport than in the classroom. and they feel that the lessons that they learn from competing and training every day to win and get better with individuals surrounded by that they're surrounded by, those kind of things actually set them up for greater success later in life than in the classroom itself. And I think there's that concept of just grinding really, really hard for something that you might not necessarily get to experience right away or experience ever, right? You wanted it, you went out there and you made it happen, but it's just that concept of like, you have to want to work hard, you have to put in the time and energy and effort that it takes to get there. And, someone else out there is working really hard to try and get to that same spot you are that way. So kind of keeping that competitive element in mind, I would say with it.
Yeah, I think for sure. I'm really big with like motivational quotes and inspirational quotes. So a lot of the times, like when I'm running or working out, I'll listen to like motivational speeches and inspirational speeches. So like something that I really reflect on that I heard a couple days ago was in order to be truly successful and be the best at what you do, you have to be unbalanced. And a lot of people preach kind of being balanced, but when you want like such ambitious goals, like you can't always be balanced, like you can't always you have to make some sacrifices. And I think for me, like a lot of the times, like I've had to sacrifice um, doing in high school specifically when I was trying to get committed and when I was trying to be the best and I was trying to break the school record for the mile, like I had to sacrifice like some social gatherings. Like I had to put those aside for the time being and kind of work on my academics, make sure I maintained my GPA so that I could get into Middlebury, while also trying to strive in track. So I think like I wouldn't trade it for the world. I think I've made a lot of sacrifices with a lot of things, and I think a lot of high level athletes have also. And I think it's just you have to choose. Like, do you really, if you really want something, you have to be willing to make these choices. And, you can kind of want it, but you won't get to that next level. Like, in order to get to that next level, the top 1%, like, you have to be willing to want it as bad as you want to breathe.
No,
So.
you're absolutely right. And that's something that I've heard from a number of different people that way. Being successful requires sacrifice, whether it's, hey, like I'm gonna miss my high school prom because, we've got field hockey practice, we've got training, we've got club, we've got an away tournament, whatever it is that way. Whatever the situation is, there's always that element of something has to be given up in order to experience high level success in anything. And I love that you brought that up. What do you feel like, or where do you feel like this concept of knowing that that's the kind of person you are, the kind of person who's going to make the sacrifices to be the best at anything and everything that you do that way? Where did that moment come from? Because I've met a lot of individuals who tell me that they have it, and then they don't do the kind of things that you're talking about. They don't wake up early, they don't put in the work, they're not disciplined, they kind of show up when they feel like it that way. And there's just this disconnect that I see among certain individuals that way, where I think they have a hard time being honest with themselves about what it actually takes to be successful and what they're actually doing that way. So, where did this concept come from for you, and how did you kind of develop this line of thinking that way?
I think a couple things come to mind. One thing that I think this was kind of after the fact, this was in my senior year of high school, but I remember I qualified for nationals for track for New Balance, and it was being held on the same day as graduation, but a couple hours later, and it was like 2 or 3 hours away. And I remember like right finishing graduation, and we took pictures, got in the car, went to nationals. Like it was, and I was like, my mom was like, "You're gonna miss like graduation parties. Like, are you sure it's your senior year?" And I was like, no, I want to go to nationals. Like I worked my butt off to get to nationals. Like I want to go to nationals. But I think for me, it was really evident during quarantine. I remember my mom, this is how I really got into running, but I think this evidently kind of made me realize like how much I was willing to work for what I wanted. And I think my mom was like, "Oh, why don't you go like run around our neighbor?" We had a neighborhood. It was like where we used to live. It was like a mile loop. So she's like, "Oh, like you could go run around the neighborhood. Like it's good for field hockey endurance." And I was like, "Yeah, sure." Like I was a freshman in high school, I was like gonna listen to my mom. So I did. And then like a couple days later, she was like, "You could try like two um laps." And then she told me like once or twice. And ever since then, every day I'd go out, do it myself. I'd do three, four. I would eventually build up in the basement. Obviously, COVID, so we weren't allowed to go anywhere. I would do core workouts down there. We had like limited fitness equipment. I'd go out in my backyard. My mom bought like a little piece of turf for me, and I wasn't able, a big part of the field hockey game is a reverse chip. I had struggled with reverse chip. I was never able to do it. All my friends at club could. This was my freshman year of high school. And I was like, I'm gonna learn my reverse chip. I'm gonna learn my reverse chip. So every single day in quarantine, I would go out for 30 minutes, shoot as many balls as I could doing reverse chips. And it was rocky. I didn't get it right away, it was horrible. But quarantine was long. Like that was months and months and months. So over time, I worked and worked and worked, and my reverse chip is probably one of my best skills now. But the big thing that kind of made me a full circle was my sophomore year of high school, in overtime, against Darien, our biggest rival. I scored the game-winning goal, top right corner reverse chip. And obviously I've scored more reverse goals, but that was kind of just like a realization to me that it was all worth it. Like that, all of that work, like it, and it's like it makes me like tear up. I know that was like a couple, like obviously a bunch of years ago, but just for me to go out like as a freshman and every day for 30 minutes, like it was raining, it was like snowing, and I would just go out and just keep working. And I think that's carried in and increased since like then. And that was at a young age. I've obviously grown 4 or 5 years since then. But I think from a young age, I realized that like I had this work ethic, I had this determination that I didn't see a lot of my friends around me having. I think like a lot of people were in awe of me, but for me, like this is just normal. Like I wasn't trying to be this way. Like this is just who I am. Like that's just what I do.
As John Wooden says, the true test of someone's character is what they do when no one is watching.
Watch.
And it
Yeah.
certainly sounds like you had this huge opportunity, multiple months, span that way where you were kind of on your own, no one was watching, and you could have just kind of sat at home and chilled out during that time. Right after that kind of 2020, 2021 era, I actually had a clinical rotation wrapping up grad school. I was working with a lot of individuals out in Phoenix, Arizona, and a lot of people were telling me all these stories about quarantine and how they gained all this weight and they didn't really do anything and they feel like they just kind of wasted the time and how they weren't very productive. And it was just so sad and unfortunate to hear because it was really a great window of opportunity to either get really far ahead or fall behind the eight ball because someone else was working ahead. During that time was actually when I started the podcast and just really kind of put my head down and kind of got this whole thing up and running that way. So I really resonate with you taking the time that it takes to, get ahead and just put your head down and grind out, anything that you're after that way. I love the concept of the home workouts that way that you were doing. And I really genuinely believe that you can get so much done with such little equipment. I've talked to so many people that feel like they need like a multi-million dollar setup with everything under the sun in order to get results. And, there's someone out there who's twice as strong as, even myself with access to half the equipment that I have. So, I'm not personally the type to make excuses that way. And it certainly sounds like you're not either. You just found a way to get it done. You improvised. I love the concept of you getting the turf at home to practice skills that way, and obviously mastering the reverse chip. Like that sounds like such an incredible kind of skill journey for you to go on, and then seeing the fruits of your labor that way. But it speaks to that concept of delayed gratification because obviously you put in hours and hours and hours of work into that. And you didn't see the results right away because there's no games. It was COVID. So it was like, I'm working this skill, working this skill, working this skill. When is it going to pay off? When is it going to pay off? And then it's like, oh, you scored the game-winning goal. It's like, hey, all that time, all that, all the hours invested into that, it finally paid off. It was worth the struggle. It was worth the frustration that I'm sure you faced. And I think that's something too that really speaks volumes to what sets individuals at the collegiate level apart in sport that way, right? Like there are individuals that I know are, in middle school or high school wondering like what it takes to succeed, what it takes to get to that next level. And this is exactly what it is, right? You have to grind when no one else is watching. You have to figure out what your weak areas are and you have to go after them and attack them because unfortunately you're only going to be as strong as your weakest link that way. So I think that the concepts and just the overall story that you've outlined really speak volume to what it takes to be successful at the next level of sport that way. It's just absolutely incredible.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, it's been definitely a journey, like a lot of ups and downs, but like one constant kind of theme is just like my family always being there for me. I think that's a really important part of like my success, and that's what's helped me. I think just ha if I had a bad game, a bad day, a bad practice, like I could always count on my parents, my siblings to kind of be there for me, and my coaches and support staff. But I think more important is just the element of family and kind of being able to fall back and if things go wrong in athletics, injuries, like one constant is my family's always going to be there. And I think they've really helped support me in all of my goals and dreams, like every single day. They sometimes call me insane for all the miles I run, but I know it's out of love. Um, and they really like I appreciate them. I'm a lot to handle sometimes, and they put up with me and they love me, and it's just like I love my family and I'm so grateful for them. So.
How were you able to keep that kind of mindset and mentality when you were overcoming some of the different injuries that you mentioned earlier?
I think just remembering every time I'd go to the doctor and have a stress fracture, um, I would burst into tears because I wasn't going to be able to run and work out and train, and that was weeks and weeks of being put behind again and again. And I think my mom, she gives me tough love, she's like, this is your doing, like you are running when you can't even walk, like that's, clearly you can't be doing that. But I think her tough love helped me realize that I need to change things. I need to trust the people who are telling me what to do. I need to not push through excruciating pain. I need to do my PT every day. I do my prehab every single day, 6 times a week, and like calf raises, hip stuff for running, for field hockey. And it's been a game changer for me. I think that's one of the things that I attribute to my longevity right now of not having, knock on wood, an injury. I think some people like really overlook sometimes the small things that you need to do. I think like some people would be like, yeah, what's 10 minutes of, prehab gonna do every day? But it builds up. Consistency is key. Like doing my 10 minutes of prehab, like in the long run could prevent something with my hips, like something with my shins, something with my calves. And I think that's been a really key thing for me. I would go in the trainers last year. I was a freshman at Middlebury, and all the trainers by the first week knew who I was. I go in there now. They were having their end of staff meeting, just the trainers, like no one else was allowed in. And I was in there doing my PT. They let me stay in there. I was like, because they just know like I'm just gonna keep working. So they were like, yeah, you can stay in. I was like, you're in here enough. I was like, okay, thanks.
I love that. I love that. And it's one of those things, to your point, everyone thinks those little things are going to amount to nothing. It's only 5 minutes or it's only 10 minutes a day. What is that going to lead to? And then to use your math there, if you're doing 10 minutes a day, 6 times a week, that's an extra hour a week. So whatever it is that you're working on, whether it's a certain skill or, hip strength or whatever it is that way, that's 52 hours a year extra that you get of that. So, if you're looking at that for a specific skill that you're trying to work on or acquire, staying late after practice and working those extra 10 minutes, assuming you have a 2 hour practice, that's an additional 26 practices a year that you're gaining of that, skill or whatever you're working on by just doing an extra 10 minutes a day that way. Those little things really compound and really often end up being the difference maker for a lot of individuals that way. So I love that you've adopted those habits. And I wish that more athletes would follow suit on that because those little things, like you mentioned, really change the game long term that way. Obviously, you've overcome a lot that way. And you mentioned that you still have the occasional bad day that way. What exactly constitutes a bad day for you? Is that a bad day in sport, a bad day in academics, just a bad day across the gamut of things that way? And how do you respond to those kind of days to make sure that you don't stay there?
I think something that I've kind of tried to embody a lot more is my running coach, Heather, says to me, like, running isn't linear, but I've applied that to life. Life isn't linear. There's a lot of ups and downs, and I think everyone can apply like their own lived experiences to that saying. And I think for me, I have it's something that I still need to work on more, but obviously if you have a bad practice or a bad day, it's going to probably affect your mood, whether you want it to or not. And I think especially if you care about what you're doing, care about your sports or academics, if you don't get the best test grade, it's going to affect you. But I think that also shows just the care that you have for what you do, and I think that's important. And if you were to not care, oh, I played bad, doesn't matter. Like I think that's personally for me, like I could never live that way because I care so greatly about everything that I do and everything that I invest my time into. And I think this is kind of going in a different direction, but something I wanted to touch upon was kind of that I forgot to mention was just the hours building up. So in some of the games, obviously we have so many talented players on my team. There's a lot of girls, but not everyone would get into the games. And so on some of the games that I wouldn't get into, after the game ended, we had tailgates. After the tailgates, I would go outside, get my stick, and for 30, 40 minutes, just hit balls, do skills. I just, for me, like, it was something that I felt that I wanted to do. Like, I craved after the games if I didn't get it going to go get those extra touches, going to get those extra ups, because I knew in the long run, like, I know that for my future, like, all this behind the scenes work, all of the early morning runs, all of the extra lifts, all of the extra reps, like in high school, like I put in those behind the scene works and it paid off. So it's like it kind of pushes me to kind of unlock my potential that I haven't unleashed yet, if that makes sense. But I think that just drives me, like the future, what I could do, what I could accomplish, like the greatness I've yet to unleash. And I think specifically for these next 2 seasons, I'm going to be an upperclassman now. Our team, we're losing, like I said, 9 graduating seniors. So the underclassmen, like we really have to step up and try and fill these shoes as best as we can, with a lot of energy, speed, passion, grit. And I have so much faith that we will be able to. But it's like everyone's just got to put their head down, keep grinding, and keep working for it.
Not to mention, you never know what kind of impact those things are going to have on others around you, right? Like you might inspire one of your teammates, hey, I didn't really play that many minutes today either. Maybe I should stay late and do some extra reps with Shawna that way. Or, maybe after the game, you've still got one of your younger fans still there hanging around watching, and they see you, hour after the tailgate, go out to the field and suit back up and get after it again, right? Like those are the kinds of things that I don't think you really fully appreciate the impact that you can have on other people until you start to see something much later on. Like you never know the effect that that'll have on those around you that way. And obviously, as you mentioned, the next couple of years are going to be big that way. But obviously, as you also mentioned, I think things are looking very, very bright for you. What do you feel like is really the thing, for lack of a better way to put it? You're the English major here. Words are not my strong suit by any means. What do you feel like is going to be the thing that cultivates that success for your team that way? And what do you feel like is going to keep that kind of culture of winning and greatness going for you all?
I would say the energy. I would say we're all so amped and excited to finally, get to showcase our skills. And I think to be able to learn and grow these last 2 years for me from the upperclassmen, it's taught me so much just on the field, off the field, how to lead, how to treat others with kindness, respect, and how to put everything into yourself on the field and for the greater good of the team. And I think just I'm so excited to finally be able to unleash that and show the underclassmen that come in and what this team's about, what this program's about, what we do every day in and out. And I think my coach, before she's has a way with words, but before every speech or before every game, she kind of says her main thing is control the controllables. And it's kind of like this is our game, like we play under every circumstance, under like every weather, like like day in and day out, and your preparation like has built you for this moment. Like you guys are all ready. And I think that's something that is so true for next year. Like we are all ready. We're so well prepared. We're so driven. We all want it so much. And I think being around 26, 27 other people who all want to strive for the same thing is just so inspiring to be around people that are literally willing to do whatever it takes for each other and are willing to do whatever it takes to win games, win a natty championship. And I think being on this team has taught me a lot about how to deal with adversity, how to deal with pressures, expectations. But I think it's really curated me into such a stronger and more resilient individual. And I think that's in the long run, that's so beneficial. And I think like athletics, I've learned like you said, like so many athletes learn their best life lessons from athletics, and I think it really curates you into such an amazing individual in so many different ways. Like you are learning to be working so hard towards a common goal. You're working so hard to strive towards like greatness with 26 other people, 20 whatever other people. And it's just like it's just awesome. Like
It really is, and I think that the results and the actions show that as well, right? Like during the season, unfortunately during the NESAC, finals that way or in the tournament that way. I know you guys unfortunately had a loss to Bates, but then the next weekend you got NCAA tournament and you come out, after a first loss of the season or tough loss, I should say, and you win like 9-0 or something crazy like that. It's like, unfortunately, bad things happen as we've discussed that way, but it's your response to them. And it's also that concept of all those little things that you mentioned throughout this, the work you put in, the grind, the commitment to excellence, they will eventually pay off. So if you unfortunately lose to a team in the season, like I don't know, maybe Tufts, as long as you stay the course, trust the process, and be consistent, you could, oh, I don't know, maybe play them in the final game and pull, come out on top that way. I think that the results and the actions that I see completely align with everything that I've heard you say thus far. I'm really curious though. You seem so invested in this world of sports and this world of just being the best physical version of yourself, mental version of yourself, to step on the field and to compete in endurance events that way and just really like, pop off as an athlete, for lack of a better way to put it. Where did the interest in English and some of the other things that you study come from that way? And, is there any overlap between that and sports in the future for you, or what does that look
yeah, so I would say like in school, when I was in high school and middle school, I didn't like math and science. I hated math and science. But I really was so interested in English and writing was definitely my strong suit. And as I got older, my writing became very reflective. It's very expressive of my thoughts, my reflections about others, the world. And I write to cope a lot of the times, specifically when I was dealing with injury and I wasn't able to kind of get my energy and anxiety out physically. I wrote all the time. I wrote all the time everywhere. And it really helps in dark places, when I'm struggling, to kind of overcome those and reflect. And coming into college, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, what I wanted to major in. And I took a bunch of sociology courses my first semester and I loved them. Like I have never in school kind of loved school. It's always just kind of been like, yeah, math, science, but like now that I'm getting to pick the courses that I'm in and really like I'm so invested in them and like at the Thanksgiving table like I was bringing up like sociology concepts my family was like but I was just like I love it. Like it's so interesting to me. And I love sociology because you get to write. It's a lot of essay-based stuff, so it's really kind of goes hand in hand with my English thing. And yeah, I love writing and I for my future, I don't really know specifically what I want to do with this, but I want to do something definitely in the fitness industry, but also incorporating some writing into there. I don't know. That's what I got, but I know I love to write and I'm so passionate about like the fitness industry and running and nutrition and all these elements that like go into an athlete's success. And I think just sharing the importance of that based on the lessons that I've learned is something that I want to kind of showcase towards others and help others navigate their own lifelines in athletics because of how what I've overcome.
It certainly sounds like you live, for lack of a better way to put it, a frickin' savage life, Shauna. And I guess I gotta wonder, where did this concept of inside the savage life come from? Is that kind of like a little bit of the self-reflection and sharing kind of the thoughts and day-to-day life that you live that way?
Yeah, so that yeah, that's my running Instagram account. And a lot of people are inspired by me. I've been told that. And so I kind of wanted, and I love to share what I do. I love to inspire others. Like I think that's so great to look up to people, and I look up to so many people, but to have people look up to me is just like it's awesome. Like it's so cool. And so every day I put like a quote of the day on my Instagram story that kind of reflects what I'm going through that day or what I want to strive towards, whether that's good or bad. And I post kind of my accomplishments athletically, more focused, more on running, but I also do kind of post some field hockey things, but it's more kind of about my training and everything with running and my PT, lifting, strength, all of that. But yeah, so I kind of started that a couple years ago, more casually, but it kind of grew and all my coaches, all my friends from high school follow it, like people here, like also like people that not even my friends, like other people, like a lot of adults that my coach trains. So it just kind of become like such an awesome community of people that support me and are there for me through the successes that I have and the disappointments. And I love being able to share that on a platform and advocate that sports is not always successes. And I do kind of outline that like on my Instagram, like when I came short of breaking the mile record and then I eventually broke it. But when I came short, I was so defeated and so disappointed. And I outlined that. I showed that. I posted that. I wrote about it because it's important to know that, like failures or defeats or disappointments, like they shape you. They push you to want more. They push you to succeed. They push you to success. And I think that's so important. And I learning that from other people, like that I look up to, like it's only kind of it feels right to kind of inspire other people that look up to me to feel the same way or to learn how like I did.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of that element of taking all the things that you've learned and then passing the torch, so to speak, to the next generation. And, I should even eat those words, next generation, because it sounds like you have an impact on individuals who are, occasionally older than you are. And it's like, it's amazing to see the influence that one individual just going out there and pursuing their goals and sharing that with the world can have that way. And I absolutely love the mission that you've been on. I love the things that you're kind of doing, and I really appreciate just the kind of person that you are that way. And I think that the more we all collectively understand who athletes are as individuals, the better we're able to kind of act and intervene in your best interest that way. And obviously, it sounds like you've created an incredible team to help you with that thus far that way. I guess I want to know too. What's the next year bringing for you outside of, upperclassmen at Middlebury that way? What new challenges do you feel 2025 is going to bring for you, and how do you kind of prep for that, new year concept that way?
I would say on the field hockey field, I just had my end of season meeting actually yesterday with my coach. So we were talking about just like my personal challenges and things I need to work on going forward. And a key is for me is I'm a more offensive player. Very hard shots, good skills, but I do struggle on the defensive end, always have. And so this spring we have a 5 week season kind of practices where the coaches can come. So my coach told me we're going to really focus in on properly using my defensive tactics, so that next year I can really apply it in games. And yeah, and also for 2025, my position's kind of up in the air right now. So kind of zoning in on my goals for where I envision myself on the field and striving towards that is definitely going to be a key for how I approach the 2025 season and 2025 year.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. Shawna, I feel like we've covered so many incredible different points and topics as it relates to you as an athlete and you personally, and just overall your journey that way. Is there any closing thoughts or closing remarks you have, or anything that we missed as we were chatting today?
I would just say like I want to like reflect on how grateful I am for like the opportunities that I've been given by my coaches, my family. And I think just getting to a collegiate level of athletics requires a lot of sacrifices from everyone, friends, and family. And I think just feeling so loved and supported at all times by everyone has really attributed to my success. And I'm just so grateful to have such a great team and be at such a great program and have such great coaches surrounding me every day. And I think I'm so excited for these next 2 years. And it's crazy I'm going to be a junior, but I'm trying to enjoy every single day.
Yep, one day at a time. That's all
Yeah.
you can do. For people who want to find out more about you, where can they find you at online?
Yeah. So my running Instagram is Inside the Savage Life. And then my actual Instagram is Shawna Ferraro. So I respond to DMs or whatever.
Awesome. We will link to all of that in the description below. That way, if you didn't quite catch it, you can just click there. Shawna, this was absolutely incredible. I really appreciate your time and everything that you shared with us.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.